Tonight, Election Day in America. Democrats' control of Congress is at stake.
When voters tell you over and over and over again that they care mostly about the economy, listen to them.
As Republicans look to upend the balance of power in the House and the Senate.
I think we're going to have record turnout because you have two excited bases who are coming out to vote for different reasons.
With races across the country coming down to the wire, a renewed focus on election security.
We've done everything from put up new fences to bring in more security.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Decision day for voters across the country. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
From CBN studio headquarters in Virginia Beach, I'm Caitlin Burke. High numbers of voters are turning out at polling places around America.
We've got team coverage tonight. Abigail Robertson is at the White House to discuss how President Biden plays into these midterms. Senior national affairs correspondent Heather Sells is tracking Virginia voters as they determine who wins two key House seats that Republicans are hoping to flip.
And CBN News chief political analyst David Brody joins us to break down the day. But we begin tonight with Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka. Matt, tonight's high-stakes elections are crucial because they're expected to upset the Democrats' power grip on Washington. They're trying to maintain control of Congress, but that's looking unlikely in at least the House.
And Caitlin, in the Senate, Democrats' hold on the upper chamber is by a one-seat margin. Meanwhile, Republicans predict a red wave that could sweep both chambers. Matt, what are the potential scenarios here?
Yeah, guys, I mean, the balance of power is certainly up for grabs here on Capitol Hill, and it could look a lot different after the dust settles. So you mentioned that red wave, and of course, if you're a Republican, you look towards the House first, and you're hoping that wave is a pretty large one. We're talking picking up anywhere from 20 to 30 seats, getting majority control of the chamber, and maybe even winning some of those tight contests with Democrat incumbents, because the more seats you have in the chamber, the more you can advance your agenda. But if you're a Democrat, I think you would take what we'll call a red trickle, meaning you think you'll lose the chamber, you'll concede that, but if you only lose it by a slim margin, that still leaves room for negotiation. That leaves room for compromise. That's important, and that really doesn't happen too often around here. But the main thing we've heard all election cycle is about this red wave because of different issues, mainly the economy, inflation, things like the border. And there's not many polls out there, and there's probably not many people out there who would say that, yeah, we think the Democrats are going to hold the chamber. So if you're a Republican, you're probably pretty confident, and you're hoping for that red wave to be a pretty big one.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Midterm elections are often seen as a referendum on the party of the president in power. With so many voters dissatisfied with the economy, high inflation, and rising crime, it's shaping up to be a potentially bad night for President Biden.
New polling shows the president's approval rating dropping as people head to the polls. A Reuters Ipsos poll published yesterday shows the president's approval rating at 39%, dipping close to his previous low of 36%.
But Biden is pushing back against that narrative that this midterm vote is about his performance and policies.
And let's be clear, this election is not a referendum, it's a choice. It's a choice between two very different visions of America.
Abigail Robertson joins us now from the White House for more. Abigail, the past week we've seen a lot of Democratic Party leaders hit the campaign trail for the one final push before today. But in key states, we saw someone who was noticeably absent, and that was President Biden. Abby, why is that?
Well, John, the key word in your question is key states. Now, President Biden has been hitting the campaign trail, but maybe not as much as you would expect a sitting president to be. And he's mainly been making appearances in comfortably blue Democratic states like Maryland, where he was just last night. And you just talked about the reason why. His poll numbers, they are not great. And in some of these contests where Democratic candidates are in very big races, they're relying on swing voters who might not have a favorable opinion of President Biden right now, and he might be a drag on some of their races. So that's why we've seen him kind of keep a more low profile in some of the biggest races around the country.
Gail, if Republicans flip the House, Senate, or both, how will that affect the next 2 years of Biden's presidency?
Well, first of all, even if Republicans just flip just one of the House or the Senate, the only legislation that's going to become law is going to have bipartisan input. Now, if Republicans win the Senate, then the court vacancies that President Biden is still trying to fill, they're going to have an uphill battle with confirmations. And if Republicans flip the House, we're likely going to see lots of House committees investigating the Biden administration. And on that same note, we're probably going to see an end to the January 6th committee.
Abby, while many voters are focused on the economy, the White House has doubled down on abortion access being one of its more dominant issues. How have we seen that play out?
That's right, John. They are counting on abortion really driving voters to the polls in the midterms. We've seen Democrats spend millions of dollars in women's reproductive ads around the country leading up to the midterm elections. But poll numbers are showing that this might not be the big issue that they're counting on. And we'll know later today if this really is a key factor in today's races.
All right. Thanks, Abigail. Let's turn now to CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. David, what are some key indicators that you will be looking at tonight?
Well, Caitlin and John, there are a lot of different ones. You see a white map behind me that'll be filled with red and blue as the night goes on. Let me show you one specific. I call this my household map. Thank you very much. This is the yellow mustard map, I like to call it. Look at the up in New York there. You see that blotch of yellow mustard. Then bottom of the map, there's Texas, South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley area. And then on the left side there, Oregon, the left coast, 3 yellow mustard areas, if you will, for Republicans. These potentially could be big gains for Republicans tonight. These are typically Democrat strongholds. That's something I'm going to be watching. Look, there are about 60 seats or so that are really up for grabs tonight. If the Republicans come away with potentially 30, 40, 50, then we're into tsunami territory. And I'm also going to be looking at the suburbs. That'll be key. There's some key counties, some key districts that will be very important early on.
David, if you didn't have that map behind you, I would have thought when you said house map, it was your house and people would be interested in the decor of your home. David, what about the races for governor? And I know you're looking at a handful of Secretary of State races. What's the significance there?
Well, let's talk about the Secretary of State races first. And I won't go through all 4 states, but there are 4 specific states tonight that we'll be keeping an eye on those Secretary of State races. These are folks that question the 2020 election. They are Republicans running in those 4 states. We'll see if they win. That'll be a big boon, if you will, for the MAGA contingent, the Donald Trump contingent. But look, let's go to the governor's races, and let's start with New York, shall we? If I put on my glasses, I probably should have put on my glasses a long time ago. But Kathy Hochul in trouble in New York against the Republican Lee Zeldin. Crime has been a big issue up there. Then this could be, excuse me, I think I did Chuck Schumer. I don't know what I was doing there, but let's go to Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer in trouble against Tudor Dixon. Now, Gretchen Whitmer is expected to win out there. However, if Tudor Dixon wins tonight in Michigan, that figures to be a tsunami-type night for Republicans. So I'll be watching that one. And, of course, we go to Arizona. We know about this race, the Katie Hobbs-Carrie Lake race. Carrie Lake with a lot of momentum late. She is expected to win that. We will see. There's been some problems in Maricopa County today, which is, of course, the big county out there in Arizona. And then we go to Oregon. This is an interesting one. Out in Oregon, the governor's race there. Tina Kotek, the blue state governor, in trouble against the Republican Christine Dresden. So we'll see about that. But those are some key governor races I'm looking at, guys.
David, quickly turning to the House, what areas of the country are you zeroing in on there?
Yeah, well, let's go to it. Let's go right to Virginia. We're going to know pretty early in Virginia. This is Virginia 2. We've been talking a lot about this race. Heather Sells did a report on this. Elaine Luria, who, of course, was part of the January 6th committee, the Democrat down there against Jennifer Kiggins. Look, Elaine Luria won this seat only by about 20,000 votes in 2020. This is what I'm going to be looking for tonight as we kind of geek out from 8 p.m. to midnight tonight on our special election coverage. I'm going to be looking at the vote differential. So she won by 20,000 votes. Does she lose? Even if she wins, is it down by about 15,000 or so? We will find out. One other one to point out down there is in the Georgia, down there, District 2, Sanford Bishop. He's been around for like ever. This is this has been a Democrat seat since 1875. 2005. He won this race by 50,000 votes. He is now in a potential toss-up race with Chris West, the Republican. This would be huge. If this one goes down tonight, we'll know early, typically by 8, 9 o'clock tonight. If he loses this seat, once again, that red tsunami could develop.
David, we and the viewers are looking forward to geeking out with you later tonight. Thanks, David.
All right, you bet.
Thanks, David. For the latest on election results, tune in to CBN News tonight for special live team coverage. You can find that on the CBN News Channel or the CBN News app from 8 to midnight Eastern Time. We'll be right back.
Well, welcome back. The Senate race in Pennsylvania has been the focus of national headlines this cycle because so much is on the line, not just there, but nationally.
Tara Mergener is on the ground in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, with the latest on how voters are feeling as they head to the polls.
Many voters here in Pennsylvania are feeling excited and a little bit anxious tonight. A tight race and ongoing litigation could set the stage for election chaos. Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Dr. Mehmet Oz are running neck and neck. One's projected to be an easy win for Democrats. This is a race that could decide which party controls the U.S. Senate. Oz, a heart surgeon turned celebrity, barely won the primary to take on Fetterman, who is lieutenant governor. Fetterman has spent much of the campaign recovering from a stroke, raising questions about whether he's fit to serve. A rocky debate performance didn't help. Underscoring the importance of the race, President Biden and former President Obama have been stumping here for Fetterman. Former President Trump held a rally for Oz. Meanwhile, the state Supreme Court has ruled that undated or incorrectly dated absentee ballots have to be set aside uncounted. Meanwhile, depending on how close the race is, we may or may not know who won tonight. In Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. Well, everything, of course, comes down to voter turnout and who actually shows up at the polls. Preliminary numbers show a record turnout in early voting so far.
That will be especially important in the races that are extremely close, like 2 House seats in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our senior national affairs correspondent, Heather Sells, is at a polling station in Virginia Beach and joins us now with more.
Yes, I'm at a windy polling station in Virginia Beach, Caitlin, and we are here for the race that David Brody was just mentioning. Democratic incumbent Elaine Luria is facing stiff competition from Jen Kiggins. We know from the Cook Political Report that this morning there was heavy turnout at some of the most strong Republican precincts in Virginia Beach, so that could be a telling sign. We also know that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was here last night campaigning for Jen Kiggins, so we know that Republicans really want this seat, and it's going to be a close race. We will be with the candidates tonight watching the results as they come in.
Heather, just a matter of minutes ago, we were just talking about the significance of early voting. Does that seem to signal one way or the other which party it benefits?
Right. Well, the conventional wisdom is that it benefits Democrats, and we will see. We know that early voting numbers are especially high this year across the country, 42 million so far compared to 39 million in the last midterm. So that's pretty significant. And we're watching a couple of states in particular with respect to early voting. In Arizona, that's traditionally been a place where Republicans were strong with early voting, but with concerns about voter fraud, the numbers are down there. And then in Georgia, the early voting numbers have been astounding, and there's a lot of thinking that that will benefit the Democratic candidate for Senate, Raphael Warnock. So we'll see how these numbers play out, but definitely something to watch.
Heather, we know redistricting will play a role in many House races. How could it impact the races you're watching tonight?
Right. Well, it's interesting because, of course, in the 2nd district, congressional district here, it's been newly redrawn, so it's new territory for the incumbent Elaine Luria and Jen Kiggins. I was at a Chesapeake rally on Saturday afternoon, and they were talking about the redistricting and talking about it as if it were a disadvantage for them, saying that they've got a lot of conservative areas that they are now having to campaign in, like Chesapeake. So it's definitely a sense that Elaine Luria drew the short end of the stick, and we'll see how that affects her and the other candidates as well.
All right. Thanks, Heather. We look forward to talking to you throughout the night.
Great, Caitlin.
Thanks, Heather. Well, threats of violence and voter intimidation are palpable concerns at polling locations tonight. 2 out of every 5 voters have expressed concern about their safety during this midterm cycle. Election officials say they've taken necessary steps to bolster everyone's safety.
We've done everything from put up new fences to bring in more security personnel, to have more cameras, to tighter controls on badge access.
The FBI and Department of Homeland Security warned violent extremists could pose a heightened threat, especially after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband was assaulted in their San Francisco home. There have been several threats of violence toward election officials in Arizona's Maricopa County, where Phoenix is located. Another security concern among voters, the integrity of the election process. An Axios poll reports 4 out of 10 Republicans and 1 in 4 Democrats say they'll blame fraud if their party doesn't win tonight.
On Election Day, voting is on the ballot. More on that when we come back. Tonight, Americans across the country are casting ballots that could determine new voting policies in 7 states. In Nevada, voters will decide whether to adopt a system to rank their preferences in the general election among the top 5 primary candidates. Voters in Ohio and Louisiana deciding whether to prohibit non-citizens from voting in local elections. In Arizona and Nebraska, voters consider stricter voting ID rules. A constitutional amendment is on the ballot in Connecticut, which would allow in-person voting. And in Michigan, a proposed amendment would require 9 days of early voting, as well as other changes, including establishing a rule around voter rights.
Well, still ahead, a mother-son duo share the reason they've made counting ballots a tradition. Next.
As we reported before the break, tonight Americans across the country are casting ballots that could determine new voting policies in 7 states.
Well, joining us now is Justin Giboney, president of the AND campaign. Justin, as we talked about, voters across the country are set to determine whether to tighten voting laws or to make them more accessible. A lot of attention was placed on Georgia, where you are, and their new voter reforms in the last year. Justin, how important is this to democracy?
I mean, if you look at this country's history, I think we should always lean towards accessibility. If the idea of democracy, I think we all agree, is a great ideal. But if we're going to reach that, then we need to make sure that everybody can get to the polls. And unfortunately, we haven't always done that in the past. I think Georgia has a ways to go. But accessibility is always something that we should be leaning towards so that everyone has a voice.
You recently retweeted a Pew survey that shows crime is an important issue for Republicans. There's an interesting split when it comes to Democrats. For Black Democrats, 82% label crime as very important. For white Democrats, it's only 33%. How do you think that will play out tonight?
Well, as you see, you look at the polls, crime is very high among a lot of people. There's a group within the Democratic Party who don't care as much about it. I think that group, unfortunately, is in the donor class and may have kind of an outsized voice in the party, and the party may end up paying for that. I know within my community, we deal with a lot of crime in some of our neighborhoods, and so it's real to us. It's not something that's a theory or that we can play culture war games with, and so it's something we're serious about. It's something that our representatives are going to have to deal with in a real way.
Justin, since you're there in Georgia and you're familiar with Georgia state politics, can you tell us about the mood there? What do you anticipate when it comes to the governor's race and also the very important key and consequential Senate race?
Well, it's tense down here. As you can tell, the balance of power in the Senate may depend on what happens here in Georgia. And what I expect tonight is not to actually have a winner. So we're going to have to go through this probably for another month. I don't see anybody getting to 50+1. And so we may end up having a runoff, which means another month of ads and all that stuff.
Earlier today, you posted some tips for Christians voting. What tips do you have for us as the results are rolling in?
We should always put this in perspective, and I think the best way to put things in perspective is through prayer. So I ask people to pray. I ask them to be thoughtful, and also to think of others and not just themselves. As we go vote, it's not just about kind of protecting ourselves and creating ironclad protections for us, but it's also about our neighbors, and then also being willing to accept the results regardless of how they come out.
Justin, really great advice there, especially the part to be prayerful for the elections. I want to ask you about the president, a man who is deeply religious with his Catholic faith. We see, though, there's a split when it comes to Catholics, very much animated by the abortion issue. Talk to us a little bit about how that will play out among religious voters who come from the same faith backdrop.
Yeah, I think a lot of religious voters, including myself, are taken aback by how the administration and a lot of Democrats in general have gone really far to the left on this issue. I think it's been unnecessary. Again, I think it's been led by a donor class that doesn't necessarily represent the base of the party. And again, it's one of those things that the party might pay for today. I think there are a lot of other issues that I would agree with the administration on. But on that one, I think they've gone to a place to the extreme that may end up hurting them at the end of the day. And in fact, I think the Democrats saw the Dobbs case and what's been going on with abortion in the courts as a plus, which I think it helped them a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough to give them a good night tonight.
All right, Justin Giboney with the AND campaign. Justin, we really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Brad.
Well, finally tonight, we wanted to show you a special mother and son duo helping out at the polls.
The mother, a new citizen, voted for the first time just 2 years ago. Her teenage son wanted to be a part of the process, but was too young to vote. So instead, he started counting ballots and inspired his mom to join.
I can't fix the entire world. I'm not that powerful to solve world hunger, but I have to do at least what I can to give those values a voice.
They plan to continue volunteering and voting each election.
They're making that a family affair.
They are. Great example.
Great tradition. And just a reminder, join us back here tonight for special live election coverage. We'll kick that off at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for watching this edition of Faith Nation.
We will see you later tonight.